Let us pray. Almighty God, from whom all wisdom and power are derived, we beseech thee so to direct and prosper the deliberations of the Legislative Assembly now assembled, that all things may be ordered upon the best and surest foundations, for the glory of thy name, and for the safety, honor, and welfare of the people of these islands. Bless our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth II, Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Charles, Prince of Wales, and all the royal family. Give grace to all who exercise authority in our Commonwealth, that peace and happiness, truth and justice, religion and piety may be established among us. Especially we pray for the Governor of Islands, the Premier, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, the Leader of the Opposition, Ministers of the Cabinet, ex officio members, and members of the Legislative Assembly, that we may be enabled faithfully to perform the responsible duties of our high office. All this we ask for thy great name's sake. Let us say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up the light of his countenance upon us and give us peace, now and always.
Proceedings are resumed.
Oath of Allegiance and due execution by Mrs. Gloria McFeel Nixon, the Honourable Acting Deputy Governor responsible for the portfolio of the Civil Service, to be the temporary ex officio member of the Legislative Assembly.
Let us all stand.
I, Gloria Michelle McFeel Nixon, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God. I, Gloria Michelle McFeel Nixon, do swear that I will well and truly serve Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors, and the people of the Cayman Islands in the office of ex officio member of the Legislative Assembly. So help me God.
On behalf of this Honorable House, I welcome the Honorable Temporary ex officio member and do invite her to take her seat. Please be seated.
Reading by the Honourable Speaker of Messages and Announcements.
Honorable members, several notable Caymanians have passed away recently, including Mrs. Julian Banks, previous long-serving civil servant, and also the mother of the financial secretary. I extend condolences on behalf of all members and would ask that we stand for a minute in respect. Thank you, and please be seated.
Presentation of petitions.
None.
Presentation of papers and of reports. Cayman Islands 2018 Statistic Policy Statement to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Public Finance and Economic Development.
The Honorable Minister of Public Finance and Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the government, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the 2018 Strategic Policy Statement.
So ordered. Does the Honorable Minister wish to speak thereto?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I do. Mr. Speaker, it is my distinct pleasure and privilege to rise today and speak to the government's 2018 Strategic Policy Statement, or SPS. The SPS outlines government's medium-term fiscal plans, broad strategic outcomes, and policy priorities for the next 3 financial years, which cover the period from January 1, 2018 to December 31, 2020. The SPS will also guide the preparation of the detailed 2018 and 19 budgets for the coming budget period, which covers the 2018 and 19 financial years and will be presented to this Honourable House in October. This SPS is the first one to be prepared following the 2015 and 2017 legislative amendments to the Public Management and Finance Law, which shifted the government's financial year from July 1 to June 30th period to a January 1 to December 31 period, and changed our budgeting cycle from an annual one to once every 2 years. Mr. Speaker, looking first at the fiscal strategy. The government's medium-term fiscal strategy, upon which this SPS has been prepared and developed, is centered on the following 3 guiding principles. First, we must generate substantial operating surpluses in each year. There will be no new fees or taxes levied on the public, and no new borrowings apart from refinancing an element of the 2009 bond that matures in 2019. These guiding principles represent this government's commitment to manage the financial affairs of the government in a manner that achieves long-term stability and sustainability. Let me speak briefly about each of these guiding principles. Looking first at operating surpluses. Mr. Speaker, managing the government's operating expenditure in a way that maintains healthy operating surpluses is a central guiding aim in our financial management policy. Doing so enables the government to use the cash generated by these surpluses to build and maintain reserves and fund its capital investment program. This SPS sets a very clear plan for the Cayman Islands government to do just that. Maintaining operating surpluses are a key component of ensuring compliance with the principles of responsible financial management and the framework for fiscal responsibility that as they are set out in the Public Management and Finance Law. This SPS keeps the Cayman Islands government firmly on the path of compliance with this important legislation. Secondly, no new fees or taxes levied on the public. Mr. Speaker, every government derives its revenues from some form of taxation. The challenge for every government and for us is to find the right level of taxation to generate the revenues needed to deliver the services and infrastructure required to service and support the needs of the people without stifling economic activity and negatively impacting the quality of life of citizens and residents. The government has made the bold decision not to seek or to introduce any new revenue measures at this stage. It was not an easy decision, but was done in an effort to keep the tax burden as low as possible, in an effort to keep the cost of living and cost of doing business as low as we can. We will instead focus efforts on maximizing collection on existing rates of fees by strengthening enforcement efforts and improving the ease of payment through e-government initiatives and business process improvements. Third, no new borrowings apart from refinancing an element of the 2009 bond. During the SPS period, the government will pursue a debt management and strategy which seeks to aggressively pay down the outstanding core government debt and not incur any new borrowings, except in 2019, where we are planning to borrow $130.65 million in order to refinance half of the 2009 bond, which matures in 2019. This borrowing will be specifically for this purpose, and no loan proceeds will be used to finance operating activities or capital investments. I think it is fair to say, Mr. Speaker, that government has learned from its experience with the 2009 bond that all future borrowings are best structured as amortizing instruments with regular principal payments being made over the life of the debt, as doing so smooths out the cash flows and reduces interest expense. Looking next at the broad strategic outcomes. In addition to our fiscal strategy, this SPS is centered around the 8 broad strategic outcomes which the government has agreed will guide our policy actions over this term. These outcomes are, first, a strong economy to help families and businesses. Secondly, achieving full employment. In other words, jobs for all Caymanians. 3, the best education opportunities for all our children. 4, reducing crime and the fear of crime. 5, access to quality, affordable health care. 6, stronger communities and support for the most vulnerable. 7, ensuring Caymanians benefit from a healthy environment. And 8, stable, effective, and accountable government. Turning now to the economy. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands is blessed to have a strong, stable, and moderately expanding or growing economy. This government is focused on ensuring that our economy is on a path towards long-term sustainability in a way that brings maximum prosperity and opportunities for our people. In our effort to support sustainable economic growth, we will continue the major economic policy interventions introduced during the past administration, such as reduced import duties, lower business licensing fees, development concessions, extended support to small businesses, and other initiatives geared towards achieving greater economic diversification and increased employment opportunities for our people. Over the next 3 financial years, the Economics and Statistics Office has forecast that our economy will grow steadily, in line with forecasts for the world's major economies, who are the source markets for our major economic pillars. Economic growth, as measured by the real gross domestic product, or GDP, is expected to grow by 2.4% in 2018, 2.3% in 2019, and 2% in 2020. These forecasts are underpinned by the assumption that the 3 key sectors of the Cayman Islands economy, financial services, tourism, and business services, will all continue to evolve and maintain their global competitiveness. In addition, Economic growth will be directly influenced by several large construction projects from the private as well as the public sectors and will include new hotel construction and redevelopment of the existing hotel properties along the 7 Mile Beach corridor, development of a new hotel and condominiums in Beach Bay, Town, redevelopment of the Georgetown Cargo and Cruise Berthing Port, completion of the new John Gray High School, construction of a new long-term residential mental health facility, the procurement of the new integrated solid waste management system, and the completion and opening of the redeveloped and expanded passenger terminal at Owen Roberts International Airport. This diverse mix of products from the public and private sectors demonstrates confidence in the economic potential of the islands and will help to strengthen our core infrastructure and position the Cayman Islands for long-term sustainable growth. Over the next 3 years, economic growth will create additional jobs and keep the unemployment rate well below the 4% level. Unemployment rates are forecast to be 3.6% in 2018, 3.4% in 2019, and 3.5% in 2020. Economic growth and increased levels of employment means that the consumption of goods and services will increase. This in turn places upward pressure on the rate of inflation as measured by changes in the Consumer Price Index, which is expected to increase by 2.3% in 2018, 2.6% in 2019, and 2.4% in 2020. Given our near total reliance on imported goods, inflation in Cayman is largely driven by external factors. As prices in the source markets increase, so they do in our retail prices and industries locally. To help manage the impact of inflation, government has taken the decision to leave in place the significant import duty reductions implemented in the last administration. Most notably, the reduced import duty down to 25 cents per gallon from 75% on fuel used by CUC for the generation of electricity, the reduced import duties of 20% down from 22% for licensed traders on consumer goods for retail sale, and reduced import duty of 15% on building materials. By keeping in place these import duty reductions, the government is doing its part to keep retail prices as low as possible, thereby keeping the cost of living for households and the cost of doing business as low as possible, and thus stimulating consumption. Mr. Speaker, I will now highlight the financial forecasts which are contained in the SPS statement. However, before I do so, I need to spend a few moments to explain how the numbers in the SPS are different than those of previous SPS documents and the current 2016-17 budget. One of the most significant amendments to the PMFL was to change the government's financial year from a July 1 to 30th of June period to the calendar year, 1st of January to 31st of December. As of January 1, 2018, our financial years will match the calendar. As a result, the numbers you see in the SPS document for the 2018, 19, 20 financial years are not directly comparable to those shown in the 2016-17 financial year, which was a transitory fiscal period covering 18 months of activity between the 1st of July 2016 and the 31st of December 2017. Mr. Speaker, the government's main revenue streams are directly tied to the level of consumption and rate of economic growth. Generally speaking, as the economy grows, so do revenues. In line with our overall fiscal strategy, the government does not plan to introduce any new revenue measures during the next 3 financial years. Mr. Speaker, the SBS forecasts that government revenues will be approximately $717.9 million in 2018, $694.4 million in 2019 and $730 million in 2020. These numbers are based on stable, conservative growth on our core operating revenue base, plus the addition of one-off transfers to general revenues, being cash assets of liquidated entities, which are forecast to be $19 million in 2018, $3.1 million in 2019, and $30 million in 2020. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to focus on controlling growth in operating expenditure. Increases will only be allowed where they can be afforded and will be restricted to high-priority areas. We will continue to challenge government agencies to seek to avoid increases by improving operational efficiencies. Core government expenses are forecast to be $636.4 million in 2018, $640.3 million in 2019, and $639.8 million in 2020. This government is committed to restricting operating expenditures below the levels of our operating revenues in order to keep generating operating surpluses. Over the SPS period, increased operating expenditures will be used to fund a number of important initiatives, including, but not limited to, enhancement to policing and public safety by the hiring of additional police officers and fire officers, along with the provision of enhanced training and support, the implementation of an enhanced work permit system that provides transparency on available jobs, increases accountability for employers, and maximizes employment opportunities for Caymanians. Increased support for the financial services industry by enhanced financial services policy functions and improved regulatory services provided by the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority in order to keep pace with the ever-changing and evolving international regulatory requirements. Enhanced tourism marketing to high-value source markets, and the launch of new air service routes by Cayman Airways to new strategic tourism markets. Continued enhancement of public education services by improving services for addressing students with special needs. Strengthening of the core curriculum across primary and secondary schools for science, technology, mathematics, and literacy, and increasing funding for overseas scholarships for advanced, specialized tertiary education. Increased monthly ex gratia payments made to seamen, veterans, and persons receiving poor relief payments. Improved services and support to our elderly, disabled, and other vulnerable persons in our society. Increased funding to Synico for the continued provision of health insurance services to its clients. The implementation of the integrated solid waste management system. Improvements to our vital mosquito control program, thereby mitigating risks to public health from mosquito-borne diseases, and the implementation of an expanded conditional release program to better enable prisoners to successfully reintegrate themselves into society as productive citizens following release from incarceration, and to lower the rate of recidivism. Mr. Speaker, over the SPS period, planned capital investments are forecast to total some $309 million, and will be spread over 3 years as follows: $101 million in 2018, $103 million in 2019, and $107 million in 2020. These investments will be directed to support debt servicing obligations and operations of our SAGCs, or statutory authorities and government companies, as well as the development of key infrastructure by the core government, such as the completion of the new John Gray High School, completion of the redevelopment and expansion of the passenger terminal at Owen Roberts International Airport, the remediation of the Georgetown landfill and implementation of this integrated solid waste management system, the construction of the long-term residential mental health facility, and continuing upgrades to our road network. Mr. Speaker, maintaining compliance with the principles of responsible financial management is another core element of our fiscal strategy. For the next 3 financial years, we are forecasting that the government will maintain compliance with the main principles of responsible financial management with a one-off non-compliance in 2019, which I will explain shortly. The PMFL requires that the government maintain positive operating surpluses. Over the next 3 years, core government is forecast to remain in compliance with this requirement, with operating surpluses forecast to be $81.4 million in 2018, $54 million in 2019, and $90 million in 2020. These surpluses are critical to generating cash which will be used to pay off debt, maintain cash reserves, and fund capital investments in both core government and statutory authorities and government companies. Over the SPS period, our SAGCs combined are forecast to record net losses of $12 million in 2018, $12 million in 19, and $14 million in 2020. These losses are driven primarily by preliminary estimates from Cineco of their actuarially assessed premiums. And given the limited time to review the submission from Cineco, the government has made and is committed to a significant provision in its operating expenses for a premium increase to Cineco. As we go through the detailed budgeting phase, this matter will be closely analyzed and it will be addressed. The PMFL requires that annual entire public sector debt service costs, interest and principal, not be greater than 10% of core government revenues. The SBS forecasts indicate that the debt service ratio will be 8.9% in 2018, 48.2% in 2019, and 9.2% in 2020. The spike to 48.2% in 2019 will bring the government into non-compliance with this ratio during that year. However, it is important to point out that this non-compliance is a direct result of the planned repayment and refinancing of the 2009 bullet bond that matures in November 2019. This is a one-off event, and the debt service is expected to fall to approximately 9.1% in 2020. The PMFL requires that government's net debt not exceed 80% of core government's operating revenues. Net debt is calculated as a total amount of outstanding core government debt plus the risk-weighted debt of statutory authorities and government companies, less the liquid assets of core government. The government is forecast to be in full compliance with this requirement over the next 3 financial years, with a net debt ratio forecast to be 21.5% in 2018, 18.2% in 2019, and 9.2% in 2020. This significant reduction places government well below the maximum allowed limit of 80% and is consistent with the government's overall strategy of debt reduction and no new incremental borrowing. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the PMFL requires that the government have liquid cash reserves of not less than 90 days of estimated executive expenses. This ratio is calculated at the point in the financial year when government's liquid cash reserves are expected to be at their lowest, which is typically the December 31st of each year. Over the year, government is forecast to maintain full compliance with this principle, as allowable liquid cash reserves for the purposes of the ratio calculation are expected to be $306 million or 175 days in 2018, $161 million or 92 days in 2019, and then be 170 million or 97 days in 2020. The reduction in cash reserves in 2019 reflects the planned bond payment of net repayment of some 130 million from our cash reserves. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the 2018 Strategic Policy Statements provides a strategic overview of the government's financial resources and how they are likely to be allocated over the next 3 years. It is not, and I repeat, it is not a detailed budget. That will come when I present the 2018 budget, 19 budget in October of this year. As legislators, we must be cognizant of the need to balance the needs and wishes of the people today with our responsibility to make things better for future generations of Caymanians. This SPS gives us such a path to firmly maintain control over our finances while providing the resources necessary to address our critical needs, upgrade our infrastructure, modernize our public services, enhance services to the most vulnerable amongst us, improve our public education systems, create more opportunities for Caymanians, grow reserves to build our financial resilience, support stable, sustainable economic growth, protect our natural environment, and overall build a stronger Cayman Islands and a better place for us all to live. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Annual Report 2015-16, Financial Reporting Authority, Cayman Islands Government, Portfolio of Legal Affairs, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Attorney General, ex officio member responsible for legal affairs.
The Honorable Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave of the House to lay on the table the financial reporting authority report for the period 2015-2016.
So ordered. Does the Honorable Member wish to speak thereto?
Mr. Speaker, just a few observations. Mr. Speaker, the report is very detailed, very comprehensive in setting out the activities for the relevant period. It provides an overview of its operation of the FRA, that is, for the period 2015-2016. And it shows, among other things, Mr. Speaker, that during the period, the FRA received some 620 suspicious activity reports, which was a record number of disclosures for the period. And it also marked the first time that the number of SARS exceeded 600. And of course, Mr. Speaker, it is the third straight year that the number of SARS exceeded 500. 2014-2015, there were 568, and 2013-2014, there were 558. Mr. Speaker, this could be partly attributable to the fact that SARS are now being received from 140 different reporting entities as compared to 114, I think, in 2014. And this does not include overseas financial intelligence units who voluntarily disclose information to the Cayman Islands FRA. Mr. Speaker, I would also wish in this report to highlight the fact that in 2016, August, a new director was appointed, Mr. Robert Berry. He succeeded Mr. Lindsay Catcher, who had served the FRA for some 11 years. and had provided very exemplary leadership. Mr. Berry came to us from the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority with a wealth of experience and was a natural fit for the post of director of the FRA. Mr. Speaker, just to also point out that because of the upcoming review of the Cayman Islands in December by the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force, where we'll be judged against the revised 40 FATF recommendations, that the FRA has been involved in a number of initiatives in preparation for this on-site review, which is going to be in December of this year. They have been involved, of course, in the National Risk Assessment. They have been involved in outreach with industry practitioners, and they have been also involved in a number of training initiatives as well. I would also, Mr. Speaker, like to use this opportunity to join the director where he mentioned in his report about the vigilance of the industry stakeholders in filing suspicious activity reports and ensuring, Mr. Speaker, continue to act as gatekeepers in ensuring that our financial industry and indeed our other areas of economic activities are not used by unscrupulous persons to launder proceeds or to otherwise involve in organized crime. And so, all in all, Mr. Speaker, I would wish to commend the report to honorable members of the House as well as the wider public for its reading. Thank you.
Audited financial statements, National Gallery of the Cayman Islands for the year ended 30th of June 2016, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to lay this on the table of this honorable House.
Does the Honorable Minister wish to speak to the report?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 52.5 of the PMFL, I place this before this honorable House, the audited financial statements for the National Gallery of the Cayman Islands, the Gallery, for the fiscal year ended 30th of June 2016. The gallery was established in accordance with the National Gallery Law, the 23rd of April, 1999. Prior to this date, the gallery functioned as an unincorporated entity. Mr. Speaker, the gallery, through its management board, acquires artworks and collection materials to be held in trust for the purpose of preserving them for posterity and promoting their usefulness in the development of arts, exhibition, research, and education for the public's benefit. The gallery promotes and encourages the awareness, appreciation, and practice of the visual arts in the Cayman Islands through organizing and maintaining permanent and temporary public exhibitions of works of art. Mr. Speaker, the National Gallery Law states that the property of the gallery is vested in up to 4 trustees appointed by Cabinet, 2 of whom may also be members of the management board. In June of 2015, Cabinet appointed 15 members of the management board, whose terms shall last until December 2017. As at 30th of June 2016, there were 9 employees at the gallery. The Auditor General has conducted his audit in accordance with the international standards on auditing and has indicated that there was sufficient and appropriate evidence supplied to provide a basis for a qualified audit opinion. Mr. Speaker, the statement of the financial performance shows that for the year ended 30 June 2016, the total revenues was $835,008. This includes a government grant of $401,850, which equates to approximately 48% of the gallery's annual budget. Included in total revenue are membership payment fees, which decreased from the previous year by $15,995. Total expenditure increased from $1,006,377 to $1,076,712. The result was a net loss of the year of $261,859. This net loss was due primarily to higher professional fees for consultancy, work for research and fundraising, as well as increased program expenses pertaining to the 2 book projects and increased spending on facility rental and the art cafe. The statement of the financial position, Mr. Speaker, shows that for the year ending 30 June 2016, assets declined from the previous year. The gallery's fixed assets amounted to $2,726,574. Current assets are $154,261, and total assets of $2,880,835. The current liabilities were $180,616. The total assets and the current liabilities equated to $2,700,219, which was the fund balance total at 30 June 2016. Mr. Speaker, given the results of the statement of financial performance, which indicates that the gallery incurred a net loss of $261,589 during the year ending of 30 June 2016, and the statement of financial position, which indicates as of that date, the gallery's current liabilities exceeded its current assets by $26,355. Although total revenue increased by 2% in the past 4 years, when the gallery moved into its new facility and doubled the scope of its operation, net profit decreased by 202% over the same period, and therefore cast a material uncertainty over the ability of the gallery to continue as a going concern. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General noted that the gallery did not comply with the requirements of the PMFL under Section 4, which notes that the financial statements are to be prepared in accordance with the International Public Sector Accounting Standards. However, the gallery's financial statements were prepared in accordance with the International Financial Reporting Standards. No adjustments were made in the financial statement as a result of the non-compliance with the law. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General issued a qualified opinion on the audited financial statements for the gallery for the fiscal year ended 30 June 2016, and the basis for such qualified opinions is as follows. The Auditor General stated that in common with many non-profit organizations, the gallery derives a significant portion of its cash receipts from various sources. The completeness which is not susceptible to independent audit verification. Accordingly, my verification of such cash receipts was limited to the amounts recorded in the records of the gallery. And I was not able to determine whether my adjustments might be necessary to cash receipts from donations and events and exhibits income. The audit report of the financial statement for the year ended June 30th, 2015 included a qualification in respect of the same matter. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, in offering this qualified opinion, the Auditor General stated that except for the possible effects of the matter described in the basis for a qualified opinion paragraph above, the financial position of the National Gallery as at June 30th, 2016, and its financial performance and its cash flow for the year then ended in accordance with international financial reporting standards. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the staff at the gallery, my ministry staff, as well as the Auditor General's office for their role in tabling these audited financial statements. I now commend these audit financial statements to this honorable House and invite members and the public to review them for further details. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Audited financial statements, Cayman Islands National Museum for the year ended 30th of June 2016, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing.
The Honorable Minister for Culture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to lay this on a table of this House. Audited financial statements from the Cayman Islands National Museum.
So ordered. Does the member minister wish to speak thereto?
Thank you, Madam Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 7 of the Museum Law, 1999 revision, and Section 52.5 of the PMFL, I would like to place before this honorable House the audit report of the Cayman Islands National Museum, the museum, for the fiscal year ended 30th of June 2016. Mr. Speaker, the museum was formed on May 3rd, 1979 by an enactment of law. Its purpose is to establish for posterity and collection of material evidence concerning humankind and its environment with primary but not exclusive reference to the Cayman Islands. The museum also serves to arouse public interest in Caymanian heritage and increase the knowledge and appreciation of and respect for it through the proper use of collection. Mr. Speaker, the museum holds in excess of 9,400 artifacts that have been donated, transferred, purchased, or found, with the majority being donations. Artifacts are documented in the museum's accession register and are used in research and are held in exhibition for public service. The research collections that those are not on exhibit at the museum are kept at the museum support facility in an environmentally controlled vault for preservation. The museum also operates a gift shop and leases a small commercial space to a third party, which operates a cafe. Mr. Speaker, the museum is funded primarily by an annual grant from the government through my Ministry of Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing. As highlighted by the Auditor General, the museum will not be able to continue as a going concern without the ongoing support from the government, which means that the museum is economically dependent on the government. With that said, Mr. Speaker, the statement of the financial performance shows that the year ended 30th of June 2016 government grants remain the same as the previous year, $820,800. During this time, product sales decreased by 17%. However, revenue from the admissions increased by 17%, while the rental income increased by 11% as per the budgeted figure. A positive point of note is the museum's fundraising effort, with fundraising income and donations reflecting an increase of 78%, although the actual amount fell below budget estimates. The museum's membership dues also dropped by 27%. Notwithstanding, the above total revenue for the museum increased by 34,455 in 2016 to 1,030,244 compared to 995,789 in 2015. Mr. Speaker, on the expenditure side, depreciation fell by 19%. Staff costs declined by 1%. Facility expenses decreased by 12%. Rent expenses rose slightly by 0.4%. Cost of goods sold increased by 7%. And administration and other expenses are increased to 80%. This resulted in a 0.15% decrease in total expenses. Consequently, a net surplus of $27,297 was realized for this year. The statement of financial position, Mr. Speaker, shows total assets for the year of $2,850,305, an increase of $66,029 from the previous year. Current assets rose by 32% for $653,401 to $862,035, and the total non-current assets fell by 6.6% from $2,130,875 to $1,988,270. The total current liabilities increased to $82,472. 2015 to $54,740. As at 30th of June 2016, the museum's equity included a contingency reserve of $200,000, and 2015 it was the same, which established by the museum's Board of Control as a precautionary measure to meet the cost of overcoming any disaster that might befall the museum. Total liabilities and equity increased from $2,784,276 to the current of $2,850,305. As at the 30th of June 2016, Mr. Speaker, the museum's statement of cash flows, $556,374 in cash and cash equivalents at one financial institution. The statement also shows accounts receivable of $207,750 and $205,200 due from the government. As such, the Auditor General notes that the museum is exposed to credit-related losses in the event of non-performance. However, given the high credit rating of the financial institution and the museum's relationship with the government, the Board of Control does not anticipate any material losses as a result of these concentrations. The Auditor General relied on the work carried out by the public accounting firm who performed their audit in accordance with international standards of auditing. The Auditor General indicated that there was sufficient and appropriate evidence to provide a basis for a qualified opinion. As such, a qualified opinion was issued with two explanations as the basis for opinion as follows. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General pointed out during the year end of 30th of June 2012, the museum changed a system that maintained the property, plant, and equipment register, which resulted in a material adjustment to the accumulated depreciation and accumulated surplus. I was unable to verify the accuracy of the adjustment at the time, and this issue still has not been resolved. Therefore, I am unable to conclude on the accuracy of the property, plant, and equipment and the related impact on accumulated surplus and equity of the museum as of 30th of June 2016. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General also indicated that in common with many non-for-profit organizations, the museum derives a portion of its cash receipts from various sources, the completeness of which is not susceptible to independent audit verification. Accordingly, my verification of such cash receipts was limited to the amounts recorded in the records of the museum, and I was not able to determine whether any adjustments might be necessary to cash receipts from fundraising, income, and donations. The increase in cash and cash equivalents for the year ended 30th of June 2016, opening cash as of the 1st of July 2015, and closing cash as at 30th of June 2016. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General further states, except for the possible effects of matters described in the basis for qualified opinion in the paragraphs above, the financial statements presented fairly in all material respects. The financial position of the museum as at 30th of June 2016 and its financial performance and its cash flows for the year end then ended in accordance with international public accounting standards. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the members of the staff of the museum, National Museum, Ministry of Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing, and the Auditor General's Office for the roles in tabling this report. I now commend this report to this honorable House and invite members and the public to review this report for further details. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Audited financial statements, Cayman Islands Health Services Authority for the year ended 30th of June 2016, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing.
The Honorable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to lay this report, the Cayman Islands Health Services Authority, on the table of this honorable House.
So ordered. Does the Minister wish to speak thereto?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with Section 52.5 of the PMFL law, I am pleased today to place before you this honorable House the audited financial statements of the CIA, HSA for the fiscal year ended 30th of June 2016. Mr. Speaker, the Cayman Islands Health Services Authority, the authority, is a statutory body that was established as an authority on the 1st of July 2002 under the Health Services Authority law. The purpose of the authority is to provide health care services and facilities in the Cayman Islands in accordance with the national health policy and strategic plan prepared by the Cayman Islands government. The authority provides primary and secondary levels of health care services for all three islands and its facilities, including the healthcare agencies. The main facilities are the Cayman Islands Hospital in Georgetown, Grand Cayman, and the Faith Hospital in Cayman Brac. We have the Little Cayman Health Center, the Georgetown General Practice Clinic, the West Bay Health Center, the Bordentown Health Center, the East End Health Center, the North Side Health Center, the Public Health Unit, the Lions Eye Clinic, the Georgetown Dental Clinic, the Merrins Dental Clinic, and the Cayman Brac Dental Clinic. Mr. Speaker, in reviewing the audited financial statements for the year ended 30th of June 2016, the authority recorded total revenues from government, patient services, fees, and other sources of $105,235,936. The total operating expenses reported were $105,168,342. The reported net income for the year was $67,594. While this income may not seem significant to some people, it represents a vast improvement over the previous fiscal year's net loss of $3,058,966. So it seems we have improved our financial position by some $3 million. The current assets for the year were reported at $42,655,508, and the fixed assets were $72,648,372. For the total assets of $115,303,880, total liabilities of the authority were $21,214,358. Therefore, the assets of the authority for the year were $94,089,522 at 30th of June 2016. Mr. Speaker, the Health Services Authority ended the fiscal period with a positive cash balance of $3,896,842 compared to 2015 balance of $6,633,017. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General completed the audit and issued a qualified opinion on the financial statements of the Health Services Authority for the period ended 30th June of 2016. A qualified opinion means that a portion of the financial statements cannot be relied upon, but the rest of the statements can be relied upon by the reader. In her report, the Auditor General pointed out 4 significant matters that influenced her to arrive at this opinion. Patient service fees. The Auditor General stated that she was unable to satisfy herself that the reported amount for patient services fees of $89.5 million is fairly stated on the Statement of Comprehensive Income. In addition, the authority could not represent to her that the controls for the recording of patient services fees are effective to ensure that reported revenues are complete. Also, because of the lack of internal controls, sufficient audit procedures could not be performed. Patient-related accounts receivable. For this matter, the Auditor General stated that she was unable to satisfy herself that the net amount of accounts receivable of $27.9 million, as shown in the Statement of the Financial Position, is fairly stated. She noted that as the amount of reported for patient-related accounts receivable is directly related to her concerns relating to the amount reported for revenues. She was also unable to perform sufficient audit procedures for this amount. The Auditor General went on to say that her review of subsequent receipts from patients to satisfy herself for the provision of bad debts at 30th of June of 2016 was also impaired for the same reason. Post-employment health care cost. The Auditor General stated that the authority did not estimate the liability for its post-employment health care plan, as no actuarial valuation was completed. Therefore, the authority did not record the liability on the Statement of Financial Position and provide disclosures in the notes to the financial statements. Personnel costs and other comprehensive gains, losses are also understated on the Statement of the Comprehensive Income for the current and past service costs relating to the liability for the post-employment health care plan. The accumulated deficit. For this item, the Auditor General stated that the accumulated deficit of $70.4 million, as stated in the net worth section of the Statement of Financial Position, is understated to the extent of the current and past service costs relating to the non-recognition of the post-employment health care plan. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General's opinion was that except for the possible effects of the matter discussed in the basis of qualified opinion, paragraphs about these financial statements presented fairly in all material respects the financial position of the Health Services Authority as at the 30th of June 2016 and the results of its financial performance and its cash flow for the year then ended in accordance with international financial reporting standards. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would like to publicly thank the board and the management of the Health Services Authority for their hard work and perseverance in producing a report for the audit to be completed by the Auditor General, which formed the basis of qualified opinion. I now commend these audited financial statements to this honorable House and invite members and public to review these reports in detail. Before I sit, Mr. Speaker, I beg to offer a statement on the passing of Ms. Jolene Banks, who was Deputy Chair of the Mental Health Commission, with your permission. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Continue.
Members of this honorable House will be aware of the recent passing of Ms. Jolene Banks, the Deputy Chair of the Mental Health Commission, a former civil servant who received the Cayman Islands Certificate Badge of Honor in 2009, and other distinctions in recognition of her contributions to the community. Ms. Banks worked and fought tirelessly for decades on behalf of those in our community who often have no voice. In addition to the persons faced with mental health challenges, these included the elderly, caregivers, women coping with prenatal loss, persons suffering from drug addiction, and youth at risk. Her service to their cause included volunteering on several government boards and with her church. On behalf of the Cayman Islands government and the Ministry of Health, I would like to express her deepest sympathies and heartfelt condolences to those she leaves behind, including her husband, the iconic Mr. Loxley Banks, the former director of broadcasting, and their large and extended circle of family and friends. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
The Trademarks Transitional Provisions Regulations 2017 to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Financial Services and Home Affairs.
The Honorable Minister of Financial Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this honorable House the Trademarks Transitional Provisions Regulations 2017.
So ordered. Does the Honorable Minister wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in July 2017, Cabinet approved the Trademarks Transitional Provisions Regulations 2017, henceforth referred to as the regulations, ahead of the commencement of the Trademarks Law 2016, which took place on 1st of August 2017. The Trademarks Law 2016, again henceforth referred to as the 2016 law, provides for a new regime for the registration of trademarks in the Cayman Islands. The regulations provide for the continued application of the repealed provisions of the Patent and Trademarks Law 2011 in appropriate circumstances. It also provides for existing registered trademarks to be transferred to the new register until their renewal date. The trademarks held in abeyance will also be transferred to the new register under the same conditions. Under the regulations, Mr. Speaker, trademarks which expired prior to August 1st, 2017 will not be transferred to the new register. Mr. Speaker, the regulations make provisions for matters pending before the court or registrar for a decision at the commencement of the 2016 law. Existing registered trademarks, pending proceedings, current infringements, assignments and transmission of registered trademarks, and licenses granted pursuant to the repeal provisions. Mr. Speaker, the regulations further deal with the issue of handling an existing trademark that is at variance with the provisions of the 2016 law. And where this is the case, the provisions of Section 45 of the 2016 law will apply. Mr. Speaker, under Section 71(4) of the 2016 law, these regulations are subject to negative resolution of the Honorable House.
The report of the Office of the Auditor General, Governance and Aviation Bodies, summary of key findings, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Chairman of Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I seek leave of the House to defer the laying of this report because there seems to be a procedural mix-up because this report forms part of the public accounts report that will be tabled either on Thursday or Friday.
I don't think we need a motion for that. Or do we need to move a formal motion? So we'll ask the House to agree to the deferral. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The matter is deferred.
Statements by the honorable members and ministers of the Cabinet.
None?
Personal explanations.
None?
Obituary and other ceremonial speeches.
None?
Raising of matter of privileges.
None?
Government business. Motions. Government motion number 1 of 2017-2018. The strategic policy statement for the 2018-2019 financial years, to be moved by the Honorable Premier, Minister of Human Resources, Immigration, and Community Affairs.
The Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move government motion number 1 of the 2017-2018 session of the Legislative Assembly of the Cayman Islands, entitled Strategic Policy Statement for the 2018 and 2019 financial years. Whereas Section 23, 1A of the Public Management and Finance Law 2017 revision, hereafter referred to as the law, states that in a year where there is to be a general election of members of the Legislative Assembly, the strategic policy statement shall be presented to the Legislative Assembly by a member of the Cabinet, appointed by the Cabinet to do so on behalf of the Cabinet, not later than 3 months after the date of the general election, thereby establishing 24th of August 2017 as the date by which the government must present its strategic policy statement to the Legislative Assembly. And whereas Section 23(1) of the law provides that the strategic policy statement shall be presented to the Legislative Assembly prior to each budget period, which is defined in Section 2 of the law as a period of appropriation covering 2 financial years commencing on the 1st of January 2018. And whereas the law therefore requires the presentation of the strategic policy statement with respect to the financial years ending 31st of December 2018 and 31st of December 2019. And whereas the government has now presented its strategic policy statement with respect to the 2018 and 2019 financial years to the Legislative Assembly, be it now therefore resolved that the Legislative Assembly approves the policy priorities, aggregate financial targets, and financial allocations set out in the strategic policy statement with respect to the 2018 and 2019 financial years as the indicative parameters on which the budgets for the 2018 and 2019 financial years will be developed.
The question is? The question is that Be it now therefore resolved that the Legislative Assembly approves the policy priorities, aggregate financial targets, and financial allocations set out in the Strategic Policy Statement with respect to the 2018 and 2019 financial years as the indicative parameters on which the budgets for the 2018 and 2019 financial years will be developed. Does the Premier wish to speak thereto?
Indeed, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, this motion seeks the approval of this Honorable House for the government's 2018-2019 Strategic Policy Statement, which the Minister of Finance and Economic Development has just tabled. I would like to start by congratulating him for his excellent introduction of his first strategic policy statement. And I also wish to thank him and his team in the ministry, in particular the Financial Secretary and his team, which coordinated the production of the statement. This strategic policy statement fulfills its statutory requirement to set out my administration's key fiscal priorities and our broad strategic outcome objectives for the Cayman Islands. It also puts forth the government's financial targets for the next 3 financial years, covering in more detail for the first time a 2-year period, 1st January 2018 to 31st December 2019. However, this exercise is more than simply about meeting our statutory obligations. This SPS gives me the first formal chance to set out the program of the new Government of National Unity, which came together following last May's election. A great deal of work has gone into shaping this program, and I want to thank all members in the coalition for their contributions. I said this is a government of national unity in which all views are valued and respected. And I am pleased to report, Mr. Speaker, that my colleagues on the government benches have taken me at my word, and they were certainly robust in the views expressed as we debated our priorities. This government's program is stronger as a result of the vigorous nature of our discussions. It is a program that is more ambitious for the challenges we presented to each other in our debates. It is a program we are confident can be delivered because of the way we have brought the civil service into our deliberations. Before I set out that program, I hope you will indulge me, Mr. Speaker, if I digress slightly to offer the House 4 things that have shaped my own thinking in the last few months. The first is a feeling of humility. I am very conscious, Mr. Speaker, that I am the first Premier in our modern political history to serve a full term and then to form a second consecutive administration. I do not take the support of our people for granted. While they elected the Progressives as the largest party in May's election, we were not elected as a majority government. That is why a coalition of national unity was not only necessary, but also underlines the need to remain in touch with and responsive to the views of Caymanians over the next 4 years. In accepting the role of Premier for a second time, I realize I am taking on a great responsibility. I do not believe the office of Premier is about self-promotion. Rather, it is about service, and I will continue to do all that I can to serve the people of these islands to the best of my ability. The second thought I wanted to offer the House is that this is a time of real opportunity for the Cayman Islands. Of course, there are challenges ahead, and I do not underestimate the potential of both man-made and natural disasters to knock us off course. However, I believe there are real grounds for optimism about our future and for belief that we as a people can come together and move forward with confidence. My third reflection has been that if we are to take advantage of our opportunities, we need to be more ambitious. In particular, as a government, we need to go well beyond what has been done before, from improvements in the quality of our public services through to our approach to economic growth. We need to challenge the status quo and set stretching goals that will lead to real improvements in the quality of life for our people. My final and perhaps most important thought is that it is all very well to be humble and willing to serve, to recognize opportunity, and to be ambitious. However, all that is for naught if nothing different happens. I am proud of what the last progressives-led administration achieved. However, there were certainly times I felt the frustration of delay and inaction within the machinery that is government. Let me be clear. I have learned from that experience. As the House will know, I cannot serve, nor do I wish to serve, a third consecutive term as Premier. So I will be going flat out to push for delivery of our priorities in the next 3.5 years. To borrow an American sporting expression, Mr. Speaker, I will be leaving everything on the field. The crucial difference in this administration's approach must be that we create and sustain a consistent and constant culture of delivery. Our people have every right to expect that the promises we made as we campaign for the election will now be delivered. In turn, we'll have set an expectation of delivery across government to ensure that our people's expectations are met. I thank the Deputy Governor and his chief officers for their willingness to embrace the challenges we are giving them. An expectation of delivery first requires us to be clear on our intentions. The final expression of that will be the budget that we will bring to this House in a couple of months. Our intention is that the budget will not only be balanced and fully compliant with the requirements of prudent financial management, but that it will allocate resources to the political priorities we have promised to deliver. This strategic policy statement creates the framework for that to happen. The work that has been done within the government caucus over the last few months has identified 8 strategic objectives that are set out in the strategic policy statement that the Honorable Minister has just introduced. Under each of these objectives, caucus has set out its ambitions for delivery and prioritized actions to be achieved in the coming 2-year period the budget will cover. One reflection I will offer, if I may, Mr. Speaker, is that the 8 strategic objectives were fairly readily agreed by all members of the coalition. In our various ways, we had all proposed similar themes during the election campaign that we found could be brought together to form a cohesive government program. There was great discussion over how those objectives should be achieved and over which possible actions should be prioritized. But as I've said before, one of the strengths of a working coalition is that this kind of debate can create a strong program that will benefit Caymanian families and businesses. Throughout my political career, I have made the achievement of economic growth central to my thinking about the role of government. Put very simply, in our 3 small islands, unless we secure economic growth, we have no chance of achieving anything else. I recall well former legislators who sat in this hallowed chamber stating that the only true independence is economic independence. They understood that economic growth is necessary to create the revenues that allow government to pursue its objectives and ambitions for our islands and our people. It is unsurprising then, Mr. Speaker, that the first strategic objective in the SPS focuses on a strong economy to help families and businesses. Central to that objective is action to enhance our key economic sectors of financial services and sustainable tourism. In particular, we'll drive the completion of the key infrastructure projects begun in the last term: a modern landfill and waste-to-energy plant, the redevelopment of Owen Roberts International Airport, the delivery of a modern cruise pier and cargo dock, and the revitalization of Georgetown. We will continue our partnership with the financial services sector, including Cayman Finance, to not only improve and market our financial services products, but to also defend our financial services business as and when needed. The challenges in this respect, Mr. Speaker, as you know well, never go away. But we will defend our islands and our way of living at home and abroad, just as I did last term at Chatham House and on BBC's Hard Talk, at the Anti-Corruption Summit, and at the FCO in London. And as you, Mr. Speaker, as the former Finance Services Minister, also did in London, New York, Washington, and Brussels. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, the current Financial Services Minister and I will visit Brussels and the United Kingdom next month as we continue to fight off the newest round of challenges. Diplomacy and standing firm are both necessary, but so is relationship building. To this end, I am pleased to say that the London office, under the able leadership of Mr. Eric Bush, is doing an extremely good job in rebuilding and improving relationships across Westminster. And it is paying dividends. An example of this is the recent reformation of the Cayman Islands All-Party Parliamentary Group of Westminster, whose members have been actively giving our islands even more prominence in London. The financial services sector faces challenges, but it continues to do well, and we will continue to provide the support needed to ensure that it continues to thrive. We will also ensure that our tourism industry continues to grow from strength to strength. Tourist arrivals increased significantly over the past 4 years and remain robust, and they are expected to remain so in the coming years. In response to this, there are several new hotel projects planned that will cater to the increasing demand for room stock. The Owen Roberts Airport renovation project is well underway, and when completed in early 2019, will readily serve increasing visitor air arrivals. To ensure we are prepared to meet the challenges and opportunities of a growing tourism market, we will fully implement the new 5-year National Tourism Plan in 2018, work on which was started in October 2016. We will also continue to support Cayman Airways. The national carrier is a key partner in helping drive our tourism product by bringing us tourists and opening new gateways and markets. As such, it is important to our economy and employs more than 300 Caymanians. Work to provide a modern cruise berthing facility and an enlarged cargo port has also been progressing, in particular in the redesign of the piers to dramatically reduce dredging and impact on the environment. Preliminary designs and cost estimations are complete. Pre-qualification of bidders and negotiations with cruise lines are ongoing, as well as is the preparation of bid documents, with a projected tender issue date at the end of September this year. It is worth noting that this project includes an enlarged modern cargo facility, which is key to our ongoing economic development. The ability to accept larger ships will reduce shipping costs and consequently reduce the cost of goods bought locally. It will also allow fresh fruit and produce to be brought in directly from Central America by ships that now bypass us for Florida. And as reported recently in the Journal newspaper, the Port Authority is receiving considerable interest from shipping companies that not only want to bring their larger ships here, but have indicated that Grand Cayman could be a transshipment port for perishable cargo out of Central America. We'll see how this develops, but at the moment, the potential is certainly welcomed and will be pursued. Part of our tourism strategy includes the revitalization of Georgetown. And so the work on the Georgetown revitalization project will move past the Phase 1 road building stage. And starting in 2018, other aspects of the project will be introduced, including making Georgetown more tourist-friendly. I will speak in greater detail about this when the budget comes to the House. In terms of the ongoing roadworks, I believe that the public is already seeing the benefit of the work done to date. and I wish to remind honorable members and the public that this work is being done not with borrowing, but from cash surpluses. Indeed, this government, like the last administration, continues to operate from a cash position for both operational and capital commitments. We recognize, though, that the strategy of support for our twin economic pillars creates two challenges. The first is that growth is too often centered on Georgetown and West Bay Road. The second is the vulnerability of our economy to shocks in either both of the pillar industries. This government will act to mitigate those challenges by implementing an idea set out by our coalition partners to develop and implement area economic growth plans to secure the geographical rebalancing of our economy and sector growth plans aimed at economic diversification. Before anyone misinterprets what the economic growth plans might be about, let me be clear. This is not an attempt to recreate Stalinist economic planning in the Cayman Islands. Rather, it is about government using its economic levers from duty concessions to planning rules to support our economy to grow in ways that are sustainable in the long term and spread benefits to families and businesses across our islands. It is also about encouraging and assisting, where possible, growth in new and emerging sectors. Medical tourism, conference tourism, technology, and special economic zones are some areas with potential. And if all goes well, it may include cargo transshipment, as mentioned earlier. Another crucial part of our economy is the small business sector. This government will act to ensure it is easier to set up and grow your own business in Cayman, especially for Caymanians. We wish to see a sensible drive for practical deregulation, and we are willing to work with business to cut unnecessary red tape. We will see opportunities to continue the work of last term and further ease the burden of duties and fees on small business where possible, and will do what we can to support easier access to affordable funding. We'll also work with the Small Business Association to introduce a small business development center to assist with training and help for small businesses to start up and be successful. An essential economic sector for our islands remains agriculture. Here, the government will continue to support farmers and encourage the adoption of modern farming techniques to improve both quality and yields. This makes sense for our economy and enhances our food security. As a farmer myself, I would add that farming, though hard work, can provide a pretty decent livelihood. But whilst we appreciate that a strong economy is a key objective, we also acknowledge that all Caymanians should benefit from this economy. A growing economy naturally creates more jobs and offers more opportunities for Caymanians to benefit, but not all will benefit in the same way. There are things government can do directly to help improve the standard of living for all. We will review the minimum wage to ensure it is keeping pace with inflation. Mr. Speaker, not only was this a campaign promise of the progressives, but it is necessary to ensure that the minimum wage remains relevant to the people it is intended to help. We, and Mr. Speaker, I include you and others in the coalition government, also campaigned on providing added assistance to those in need, but doing so in a responsible and sustainable manner. There is an expression that a rising tide lifts all boats, and indeed it does. But as Rahul Gandhi once noted, a rising tide does not lift those people who do not have boats. And so, as the economy grows and benefits the majority, we need to ensure that we do not forget those who need a helping hand. So I'm happy to advise the members opposite, Mr. Speaker, that the government will be fulfilling the promises made during the election campaign concerning improvements to social service assistance. Firstly, we will increase the ex gratia poor relief payments made to Caymanians who are challenged to provide for themselves, either because of physical disability, advanced age, or mental incapacity. Presently, they receive a stipend of $550 per month, and we will increase this to $650 monthly from January 2018, and then to $750 in January 2019. I would add that we were initially looking to provide a higher amount, but an additional $1,200 per year per person is what was found to be affordable and sustainable, Mr. Speaker. However, it is worthwhile noting that government also assists these individuals in many other ways, with medical costs, utilities, and other benefits as well. In this financial year alone, some $125 million will be spent on social service needs. Mr. Speaker, we will also provide an increase to the Seamen's and Veterans Ex Gratia grant, similar to what was just outlined for Poor Persons Relief, from $550 monthly currently to $650 in January 2018 and to $750 in January 2019. Many of our elderly seafarers have no pension and rely every month on this stipend. I know, Mr. Speaker, this is something you campaigned on, and I am glad that we have been able to provide an increase, albeit not to the level you sought. But again, as we start to get into the next budget review, we will look at this again for the 2020-2021 budget. And I will point out that government does also provide health insurance for seamen and veterans, so the assistance provided is much more than the ex gratia payment. And, Mr. Speaker, we also promise to assist civil service pensioners who served our country for many years, but who are now retired in Cayman and receive a sum that is less, in some cases far less, than what is provided for poor relief. We promised during the election campaign to correct this, and so the next budget will provide an additional ex gratia stipend to supplement the pension for retired civil servants with more than 10 years tenure and who reside in the Cayman Islands. The aim is to ensure that they receive a combined sum, pension, and ex gratia payment that is no less than paid for poor relief payments noted previously. That is a minimum sum of $650 per month from January 2018 and $750 per month from January 2019. Mr. Speaker, in this SPS, we have not accounted for any specific reduction to government duties and fees, but neither are we looking to increase duties. As the Minister of Finance indicated, we will continue the major stimulus policies introduced during the last administration. These include reduced import duties, lower business licensing fees, development concessions and support to small business, as well as initiatives to improve diversification of our economy and employment of our people. We will seek to ensure consumers receive fair pricing in potentially uncompetitive markets, starting with the fuel market as was begun by the last administration. And so one of the main objectives of the Utility Regulation and Competition Office will be to quickly complete the work needed to ensure fair pricing and competitiveness at the gas pump. We have recognized there are particular issues in the affordable housing market. We will encourage private sector investment in affordable housing through import duty reductions and allow homes to be built on smaller lots. In addition, we will extend the Guaranteed Home Assisted Mortgage Program so that banks can more readily lend Caymanians money to purchase these affordable homes. Ronald Reagan once commented that the best social work program is a good job. I agree. The best single contribution to ensuring a decent standard of living is employment. So our second strategic objective is to improve the functioning of the labor market to ensure all Caymanians can find employment. Our commitment to full employment does not mean everyone is employed all the time. There are short-term economic fluctuations in construction and tourism, for example, which means many people face short periods of unemployment. However, there is no reason for short-term fluctuations to become a long-term problem in an economy as buoyant as the Cayman Islands. Caymanians wishing to work should be able to access employment and should not be disadvantaged in the labor market. The government in the short term will act to make changes to immigration regulations to improve the fairness and transparency of job advertising. In the longer term, we're establishing the new Human Resources Department to take on the labor, pensions, and work permit functions and to give government the strategic oversight and planning of future human resource requirements. If the strengthening of regulations and the enforcement is required, we will not hesitate to act. This is not all a one-way street. Many businesses actively hire and develop Caymanians, and we will put in place a system to recognize and reward those businesses. The further development of the National Jobs Clearinghouse will improve the transparency of the work permits process and ultimately make things easier for business and job seekers alike, as all available jobs will be required to be listed there. Work on this was started by the last administration and will be completed next year. The Cayman success story has been built on the ability of businesses to not only hire and train Caymanians, but also to bring in guest workers to ensure that we have the resources and expertise to grow the economy. As we allow individuals to come and live and work with us, we need to accept that many of them will remain and become Caymanians and have families, children, and grandchildren who will become part of the Caymanian fabric. This is how we have grown and how we will continue to develop and build our country. But we must strike the right balance to ensure that the immigration and work permit systems work more efficiently and are more transparent and fair to those seeking employment, including Caymanians and those wanting to become permanent residents. And so we will improve the immigration law and point system to try to get this balance right. Still, some Caymanians need more help to access the labor market. In our last term, readytowork.ky was a successful partnership between business and government aimed at supporting such individuals into work. During the pilot of the readytowork.ky program, assistance was provided to 137 Caymanians who had difficulty keeping employment. When the pilot program ended, 89 individuals had completed the program, 64 of which obtained employment, and 25 who were engaged in ongoing training, development, and recruitment activities. Government will extend readytowork.ky in this budget cycle and develop new work programs as necessary to make Caymanians who need extra help work ready and successful in the workplace. We will also look at how best to work with private sector to provide more apprenticeship programs and other work-based training for Caymanians. Work programs, though, are a short-term necessity, not a long-term strategy. The key in the longer term is that the Caymanian workforce has the level of education and skills needed in the increasingly globally competitive marketplace. Education was raised as a key concern by both parents and young people during the election campaign. We have heard directly from businesses about the current and future requirements needed for their workers. Our third strategic objective is therefore to ensure that we give the best educational opportunities to all our children. Great education is about the quality of teaching and learning. It reflects strong and able leadership of schools and is underpinned by the quality of the learning environment. It is seen in the results young people achieve and in their future desire to learn that they take with them into work. As the provider of public education, the government has an absolute responsibility to support our young people to develop themselves, to help nurture their hopes and ambitions, and ultimately to enable them to achieve all that they strive for. This government will not shirk that responsibility. We need to get the basics right. Students in public schools must have the right materials and supplies. Schools themselves must have appropriate equipment and facilities. In this SPS, we have budgeted an additional $18 million to cover special education, enhancing science, literacy, and math, additional teachers, as well as skills upgrading for 400 teachers and assistants, and for scholarships and youth programs. In addition, on the capital side, we have included some $56 million for computer software and equipment and needed improvements at Savannah Primary, Bordentown Primary, and Red Bay Primary. This also includes funding to start the initial planning work for a new West Bay Primary School, as well as to complete the new John Gray High School. Across public schools, we are developing plans to expand the use of technology to assist teaching and learning. I believe that with this continued focus and investment, the country will appreciate how committed we are to provide our children with the best education possible. The new education law passed by the last administration devolves greater authority to schools for their own management and decision making. In return, we will not hesitate to hold principals and teachers to account for their performance. We will judge that performance partly in traditional academic terms. We will work with schools to focus on achieving higher standards of attainment, particularly in literacy, numeracy, and science. However, for many students, and to meet the needs of our economy, that drive for academic improvement needs to go hand in hand with the expansion of high-quality technical and vocational education and skills. By expansion, I not only mean programs and courses, but also expanding the opportunities for youngsters to be exposed to trade and vocational education training, and where appropriate, encourage them to consider further TVET training locally or overseas. This encouragement should come from the home as well as from the school. And so we will ensure that schools' guidance counselors also point youngsters to the kind of vocational careers where TVET provides the right training ground. For many of our young people, training and accomplishment in a trade can bring with it a good livelihood as well as employment security for a lifetime. The vast majority of the work permits issued are in the trades. This is because in modern times, our people have shied away from the trades, including the tourism and construction fields. And in part because of this general lack of interest, TVET courses have suffered from the development of single-purpose initiatives and uncoordinated activity. Contrary to what many believe and say, there are a significant number of TVET programs available throughout the public and private sectors. In the coming months, we will audit the current provision of programs available and bring forward a coherent strategy to better utilize these programs. And we will dialogue with private sector to determine what their needs are regarding trained employees. With limited resources, we must ensure that quality available programs are fully utilized and supported to avoid spending funds unnecessarily and duplicating efforts. We must ensure that we are providing training in the jobs employers need filled. Mr. Speaker, the House should not be under any illusion about the priority we will attach to acting on the results of the TVET review. So much so that we will be making a clear commitment by setting a target for at least 75% of high school graduates to move on to post-secondary education or training locally or overseas by the end of this term. This represents a significant challenge, but one to which we are determined to rise. Mr. Speaker, this government is also determined to improve the life chances of students with special needs. We will ensure that schools have facilities appropriate to meet the needs of this cohort of learners and that teachers have the necessary training. It is vital that there is an effective partnership between the schools and parents to create the right environment for special needs students. We will encourage the creation of new support mechanisms for parents that facilitate that partnership. When education does not deliver for young people, when people cannot get work and the benefits of growth are not felt by all in society, and when some in our society feel left behind, it creates divisions in our communities and the conditions that foster criminality. We were left in no doubt talking to voters at the election that crime has become a real concern right across the Cayman Islands. And only recently, I attended a residents' meeting in Central Scranton Park and again heard directly about the crime issues facing that community. And so our fourth strategic objective is to reduce crime and the fear of crime. For many, the prime concern has become violent crime, too often involving guns and too often arising out of gangs and drugs issues. Others express concerns about what happens in their community in terms of nuisance crime, everything from petty theft, illegal motorcycles, and speeding vehicles. The immediate response has to be more effective policing. My government has met with and received the requests from the police commissioner for new resources to tackle crime on our streets, particularly planned investment in community policing. I will note now that we were not able to entirely meet his request as the cost exceeded the available funding. But we also had concerns with the request to increase the officer count by a significant number, requiring overseas recruitment without sight of an overall plan of action. That notwithstanding, we are committed to providing a substantial number of new officers, 75 over the next 3 years, together with added civil service support staff. We campaigned on the need for improvements to community policing, and I was heartened that the Commissioner is of the same view that, and this is one of his priority areas. That said, I have asked that he look into utilizing a community warden approach, as has been used in the United Kingdom and elsewhere, to enhance the community policing efforts rather than police constables who may be better utilized solving crimes. I was encouraged that he has agreed to look at this. The community warden approach has the benefit of not only utilizing a suitable person who will know the people in the communities served, but importantly, they will know and trust him or her. Community wardens need to be trained to understand aspects of the law and some policing methods, but do not have to fulfill the requirements of a trained police officer. Indeed, there may be former police officers who, though retired, are still fit enough to serve in a warden capacity. We're also committing additional funding on the capital side to bolster coastal defense, including creating a Coast Guard unit, purchasing new police vehicles and tactical firearms assets, and to provide significant enhancements to border control at our airports. We'll also start the work on requirements for building a new West Bay police station and a new Georgetown police headquarters, both of which are badly needed. However, in line with my earlier point on creating a culture of delivery, we will not only provide additional resources to the RCIPS, but we will also insist that resources are used as agreed and will hold the Commissioner to account for the results. This will mean creating new approaches that foster accountability and enhance the responsiveness of the RCIPS to the people's concerns. Our proposal to accomplish this is the establishment of a Cayman Islands Police Authority, and we will discuss with Her Excellency the Governor how we can establish such a mechanism quickly. We also need to act more broadly to make things more difficult for criminals. Key to tackling that at the national level is to make our border control more effective at our airports and around our waters. In addition to a Coast Guard to assist with search and rescue, as well as the detection and interdiction of boats arriving in Cayman waters with illegal cargo, we will reform current services to create a new border protection agency. We'll do this by combining the law enforcement units in immigration and customs to make a single cohesive border protection unit that will, together with the capabilities of the Coast Guard service, have a profound impact on border security. We are serious about making it very difficult for drugs, guns, or illegal persons to enter our waters and for stolen goods to leave our shores. At the local level, the safest communities are those that take responsibility for themselves. We will encourage and support the establishment of more neighborhood watch schemes. These, coupled with a more visible community warden policing presence, should keep our communities safer. These measures are about dealing with crime now. In the longer term, the answer lies in stopping our people turning to crime in the first place. I believe the most significant contribution to crime reduction will come from the early identification of young people at risk of offending behavior and putting programs in place to support them to make better life choices, choices that will benefit them, their families, and their communities. Work on this commenced during the last administration, and an interministerial committee on youth affairs has been established to serve as the coordinating and advisory body to implement plans in this area. Plans also include Department of Children and Family Services operating a preventive program with social workers who specialize in family crises resolution and trauma work. Preventive services are designed to help parents manage their children's concerning behaviors and help keep at risk young people out of the juvenile justice system. It is a tall order, but one to which we are committed. Just as we look to keep youngsters out of jail, we will not give up on those already caught up in the criminal justice system. We need to cut repeat offending by encouraging the rehabilitation of offenders and support them into employment on their release from prison. Our last administration passed the Criminal Records Spent Convictions Law to positively impact the prospects of Caymanians who have served their time for offenses and have demonstrated their individual ability to live productive lives. It will enhance the employment prospects of ex-offenders and assist in removing travel restrictions. The law also helps reduce the barriers to successful reintegration into the community. The next step with the law is for the governor to appoint members to the expungement board. This board will be able to expunge the records in the Cayman Islands of former and reformed offenders, which aligns us with contemporary international standards while ensuring public safety and protection. Government is leading the way with our Second Chances program that seeks to provide employment to former prisoners. There are also several private sector companies that do their part, but more needs to be done, and this will be a focus area for us. Another focus will be plans to build a much-needed new courthouse. I hope that by the time we present the budget, I will be able to say more on this. But we will be budgeting funds to ensure that the necessary preliminary work can be started. We'll also explore building a new fire station that will serve the eastern districts. Necessary repairs will be made to existing stations and new vehicles, including fire trucks, will be purchased. In addition, funding will be provided to hire additional fire officers for both the domestic and aerodrome services, and we will invest in necessary protective gear. Turning to the prison, funding will be available for necessary repairs, but we will also begin exploring building a new facility. This is a major initiative, but regrettably a very necessary one, as facilities at the prison are becoming more and more unsuitable. Another of the major social issues facing our country is reflected in the government's fifth strategic objective, ensuring people have access to quality, affordable health care. We are proud to have some of the best health facilities available anywhere in the region here on Grand Cayman at Health City and at other medical facilities as well. Yet many Caymanians complain that they are unable to readily benefit from those facilities. Indeed, we recently saw a very short-lived attempt by a private insurance company refusing to pay claims for services provided by Health City. Admittedly, in recent times, some cynical clients have seen improvements to accessing care at Health City, but we still receive too many complaints from the public regarding roadblocks to receiving tertiary care at institutions such as Health City. There are times when patients are being sent overseas when quality tertiary care is available locally at less cost to government and to families. And so government will develop a new working arrangement with Health City and with other medical facilities to ensure that more Caymanians insured through Cineco can benefit from the high-quality health care they provide. At the same time, our own medical services offered through the Health Services Authority must not only be of a high standard, but must be run efficiently. The Auditor General's report on the Cayman Islands health system, along with their health industry survey, provides useful insight into the state of local health care, what we are doing well, and where there are challenges. Improving the efficiency and effectiveness of our healthcare system will require a long-term strategic change. Our first step will be to talk with the industry players, including those at the HSA, to determine what reforms are needed and to devise new working arrangements that will catalyze the changes we need to see and perhaps identify what services should be focused on in future years. In terms of procurement, work has already begun to reduce costs with the use of the reverse auction system to purchase pharmaceuticals and medical supplies. To date, the savings are substantial at a projected 32% of the cost compared to using traditional procurement methods. The The needs of those suffering mental health problems will not be neglected. The previous administration began work on a new long-term mental health facility, and this government continues that work. We recently appointed architects to design the facility, which will enable us to treat people here closer to their families and communities rather than sending them at great cost to America or Jamaica. More needs to be done to prevent health problems arising in the first place. Too many people in our communities are dying prematurely or have to live with long-term preventable conditions. The government will renew its efforts in public health programs and promote healthy lifestyles among our people. But perhaps the best opportunities for change lie with teaching our children at an early age the value of healthy food choices and a love for physical activity. The government will also make it a priority to ensure that Caymanians access appropriate health insurance at a fair price. This was an election campaign promise of ours, and I know it has been a concern for many of us in and outside this House. It is thought that the insurance market does not function fairly, with too many Caymanians still unable to receive affordable insurance cover because of pre-existing conditions, and with senior citizens in particular unable to afford premiums after they retire, if they are even able to get insurance. Many are forced to seek to be declared as indigent to receive assistance from Cineco. In short, those who need it most are being priced out of insurance coverage. We believe that part of the solution will be for the role of Cineco to be broadened as part of a reform of the insurance market. At the moment, it falls to Cineco to cover those who are unable to afford private insurance cover, essentially with government picking up the full cost. This is unsustainable, and we will look at how best to position Cineco to provide insurance cover to a broader demographic that includes younger and healthier persons so as to lower the overall cost to the public purse. The finance minister spoke about Cineco in his presentation, and he noted the increasing cost of Cineco premiums, in large part due to government providing insurance cover to the market segment that the private sector will not serve. Our sixth strategic objective is to create stronger communities and to support the most vulnerable in our society. As I've said publicly very recently, some of the programs we have put in place to support vulnerable people fail them. Our social services and welfare programs are inefficient, and the programs, as well as the agencies that deliver them, need reform. In short, Mr. Speaker, we need to ensure that we get the right help to the right people at the right time. Following the critical Auditor General's report on welfare programs in 2015, the last administration committed to a program of changes to help meet that objective. The successful implementation of that program will be one of the key priorities of this new administration. I have only recently, as the Minister with responsibility now for community affairs, I have only recently received the outline business case on the proposed modernization of social assistance programs and discussed its broad proposals with my chief officer. My caucus and cabinet will review the recommendations in the OBC over the next few months as we prepare for the detailed budget plans. I can confirm that we will address the concerns of the effectiveness of the Needs Assessment Unit, as well as improve the speed at which landlords and others who provide services to our social service agencies receive payment. Both of these are major areas of complaint, and we will correct them. Whilst I appreciate the concern and desire for government to construct or purchase housing to be used for temporary accommodations by social services, the fact is that that approach is not only impractical and cannot be afforded in this budget, but is also unnecessary. There is more than sufficient housing stock available in the private sector, and government would be robbing landlords by setting up in competition with them. The issue that landlords have is with receiving payment in a timely manner, as well as concerns about damage caused to their property. By ensuring that rent payments are received on time and that landlords are treated fairly regarding damages, then we can largely solve the issue of temporary housing without government taking on the burden of owning an estate of houses with the ongoing operating costs. The approach we are taking is both affordable and practical. As with individuals, some communities need more help than others. So our plans are to introduce an urban development commission to help improve the quality of life, in particular disadvantaged communities where more help is required. This will initially be part of the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative, but will eventually be expanded to communities across all districts that also need help. One of the key expressions of community, Mr. Speaker, is culture and heritage. In the Cayman Islands, we have a culture and heritage to be proud of. The last administration consulted widely on the development of a national culture policy, and I was very delighted and proud, Mr. Speaker, to have been the minister in charge of that subject during the last administration. This government will pick up the challenge of its implementation. We'll promote culture and heritage in schools and to guest workers. We'll celebrate with cultural festivals that attract locals and visitors alike, and we will promote the work of our artists and crafts persons. I spoke at length about this government's commitment to the education of our young people. We are equally committed to enhancing their life chances more broadly through community activity and through sport. Community facilities will be encouraged, and we will ensure that these are well maintained to enable participation. Where we have athletes with potential to attain elite status, we will support them to fulfill their potential. Similarly, older persons deserve our respect and thanks, and where necessary, our support. Again, the last administration has put the foundations in place with the long-term ambitions set out in the older persons policy. Plans for its implementation are well advanced and will be taken up by this government. For those who need residential care, this government will continue to support the Pines Retirement Home, Sunrise Cottage, the Golden Age Home, and the Cockernal Rest Home. Our seventh strategic objective is to ensure Caymanians benefit from a healthy environment. These three Cayman Islands remain a very special place to all who live and visit here. Part of what makes us so special is our sea, sun, and sunshine, combined with our unique flora and fauna. We have a responsibility to this and future generations of Caymanians to do what we can to protect and manage our marine, natural, and built environments. This is why, Mr. Speaker, in the last administration, we passed a comprehensive national conservation law, purchased land near Smith's Barcadere, and also began the work to review our marine parks. We remain committed to protecting our environment, but we must also ensure that we get the balance right between preserving our environment and the need to responsibly develop our islands to help provide employment and opportunities for our people. We will continue to support the environment, but we cannot ignore some tension that exists between allowing necessary responsible development and protection of our environment, particularly following the passage of the National Conservation Law. As an example, we are being told that going forward, almost every new government road will require some form of environmental impact assessment, increasing the cost as well as the timeliness of completing necessary roads. Truth be told, this tension has always been there, and perhaps in the past, too often development has won over protecting the environment. However, both aims are important and need to coexist, with Cabinet receiving proper advice and having the ability to mediate or decide in cases where a side must be chosen. And so we will look again at the National Conservation Law to determine what amendments need to be made to ensure the proper balance is struck. Central to our efforts to protect our environment, we will continue to move towards more sustainable energy production and usage, including by CUC. We will encourage green energy through the increased use of solar panels and other forms of renewable energy across all three islands, including at government facilities. Getting this right will also help create new jobs in green industries. Our plans around sustainable energy were set out in the National Energy Policy, which was passed during our last administration. And speaking of green, we intend to put in place an ongoing program for the eradication of the green iguana. Whatever form this program takes, It will not be like that last carried out by DOE, which included some form of lottery. We will also broaden the program for the eradication of the Aedes aegypti mosquito island-wide with the continued assistance of Oxitec. There are specific needs on the sister islands to which we will respond. The landfill will be closed, and we will continue to build infrastructure to deliver piped water throughout Cayman Brac. Work continues on the multipurpose center on the bluff, as well as at the sports facility also on the bluff. We will implement the new integrated solid waste management strategy developed under the last administration. This will involve new infrastructure, including a waste-to-energy plant and recycling and composting facilities. The remediation work on the existing landfill will start in 2018, and it will be closed when the new facilities come on stream. This implementation of the new waste management system will dramatically reduce the need for the landfill, and so will resolve once and for all the question that has vexed successive governments of these islands: what do we do with the dump? The government is committed to maintaining beach access rights and to creating more public open spaces. Programs to safeguard land, either through planning restrictions or through purchase by the government, utilizing the environmental fund where appropriate, will be implemented. Another environmental infrastructure requirement is reflected in this government's commitment to ensure there is sufficient cemetery space available to meet the future needs of the country. I am happy to be able to advise you, Mr. Speaker, that this includes a much-needed cemetery for West Bay, another promise that we both campaigned on, as did the Minister for Financial Services, who is the member for West Bay South. The 7 strategic objectives I have outlined so far are all outward-facing, focusing our attention on the outcomes we wish to achieve for the country and its people. Our 8th objective recognizes our own responsibilities to ensure the effective governance of our islands through stable, effective, and accountable government. The last administration restored sound public finances and moved us to compliance with the requirements of the Public Management and Finance Law. This government will maintain that record of compliance. I want to note that this strategic policy statement was prepared on the basis of 4 fundamental principles that underpin this government's fiscal policy, with a number of objectives in mind, including the SPS must provide significant surpluses, it must not include any new debt or taxes, it must repay at least half of the bullet bond in 2019, and it must be affordable and fully comply with the framework of fiscal responsibility set out in the Public Management and Finance Law. By committing to economic growth, we will grow government revenues, and in parallel, we will challenge the civil service to deliver efficiencies to reduce costs, essentially growing our revenues and managing our costs. This approach will enable the investment needed to provide for the priorities I have highlighted today. And healthy surpluses will also mean that we can maintain the necessary cash reserves and have funds for capital projects. We expect that with sound management of our finances, we will be able to repay half of the US $312 million bullet bond in 2019, while our excellent financial position generates a credit rating that ensures we can refinance the balance on favorable terms. The government program, which we began to implement in the last term, is being rolled out and will deliver improved access to more responsive public services while achieving considerable efficiencies in their delivery. We will respond to our concerns over cybersecurity by enhancing the protection of government systems and data. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I think that we as political leaders need to take responsibility for the fact that people feel disconnected from the political process and from their representatives. In the short term, this can create dissatisfaction with government. In the long run, it is dangerous for our society and our democracy. As elected representatives, we need to reconnect with our people and to enhance the democratic accountability of government. This government will do more to ensure a regular and effective flow of information between people and their elected representatives. We will look for new ways in which to encourage democratic engagement and participation and we will deliver on the constitutional provision to establish district councils in each electoral district. This will require a review of the current district councils law to determine what changes are needed to make it relevant to the new single-member constituency regime. Accountability must not just be felt at district council level, Mr. Speaker. It must start with this government being willing to give a clear and transparent account to the people for its performance. The SPS we are putting forward to the House today only sets a framework. I have demonstrated today that this is a government with ambition, and I have underlined a willingness both to build on the success of the last administration and to tackle some of the long-standing problems the country faces. But as I said at the start, ambition is worthless if it is not matched by determination to deliver. The SPS gives us a framework, but it is over the next few weeks that we will establish the concrete targets we intend to achieve and to devise the delivery plans that will get us there. It is the task of the budget process, which the SPS kicks off, to allocate government's resources against those delivery plans to enable us to realize our ambitions. All of that is for the future. The first step in achieving our ambitions for the future of our country is to pass the motion before the House today to support the SPS that the Honourable Minister of Finance has tabled. Mr. Speaker, I commend this motion to the House and encourage all members to approve the SPS presented by the Minister of Finance as the broad indicative parameters for the development of the 2018-2019 budget for the Cayman Islands government. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I think at this time we will take the lunch break, and we should come back by 2:15. 2:15. Before you leave, just a bit of housekeeping protocols to remind and perhaps educate the newer members. Any member leaving or entering the chamber when the House has been called to order and has resumed must kindly bow to the chair. Members rising from their seat must bow to the chair. Members coming back and before seating must kindly bow to the chair. Members of the public in the gallery must, on entering the gallery and obtaining a seat, must bow to the chair and do the same on leaving their seat. Persons inside the chamber should do the same. These are the protocols that forms the decorum of this legislature that must be observed. Now we can have lunch.
Mr. Speaker.
The member from East End.
Thank you, sir. I was trying to get your attention before you called for the suspension, but I didn't. And now that you have read that out, while sitting here, I observed the gentleman standing in the gallery and subsequently looking under the chairs, the public gallery chairs, which gave me reason to be concerned. So I pointed that out to the sergeant, but I don't know if the gentleman has left by now, but that is reason for concern. If they're doing work, they don't do it while Parliament is in session.
Thank you very much, member from East End. But there are some changes to be made because we have to observe better security in this legislature, and that will have to be taken place. I did observe some things, and that's why I decided to set out the quorums and the protocols that are expected in the legislature. Thank you. Again, Let's have lunch.